Hello, everyone, and welcome to this exciting go home edition of the We Won Houston podcast. I'm joined by a very special guest, one half of the Bullpen podcast. Go check that out alongside Third Coast Tom, Mr. James Roy. James, thanks for coming on, man. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me on. Excited to talk some Texans football as we actually get closer to the Texans season. So, yeah.
Absolutely, man. Listen, we are officially 24 hours away from rookie report date of the 21st, which is exciting. It has been a slog to get here if you're a Houston sports fan in particular, between Rocket storylines and whatever the heck the Astros are doing. But we finally made it to Texans training camp. So we have a lot to talk about. We have some rookie position battles. We got a special request from a friend of the show at Ice in My Veins. And I'll show you the name, how to spell it. I want to do it justice. And yeah, man, and some other things as well. But going into it, man, look, we're just going to do this. Let's just jump right into the special request. So, friend of the show at Ice in My Veins VSM, he said this, James. He said, any chance of a segment on camp battles or key things to watch for at training camp for attendees? I want Jack Stonehouse to win his punting battle versus Crozier. He was the best punter in college football last season. That's when I said, hey, Lord willing, that's going to be Monday with James Roy. We'll be getting to the nitty gritty. So there you go, right? So this was already set up. Man, so this is not the first time I've heard about the punting battle being a big thing, but as a leadoff to all the other position battles. So what do you think, man? Punting battle, New Orleans Saint Crozier versus Syracuse's Jack Stonehouse, man. Do you have a dog in that fight, or do you have a preference? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
I like Stonehouse a lot. I just didn't, maybe it's, my recent, past few years of playing Dynasty Fantasy Football, but just getting the young guy seems like the better idea. And that's not to say that Crozier's not young.
Mhm.
But and a lot of people's biggest holdup is going to be, well, the Texans traded a pick to get Crozier from the Saints. And it's like, I don't know that I with the way that the Texans have drafted and the amount of players that were drafted after the fourth round that have made the roster, I wouldn't put too much stock in a pick that was traded later than that to go get a player. So I think I'm glad they made it a competition. I think that the first thought of Crozier when he was traded for was like, is he really better than what we had or worthwhile enough to trade for?
Mhm.
And so I never really put too much stock and I was hoping they would sign or draft a punter
Mhm.
later in the draft. And so I'm glad that they did. And I wish Jack Stonehouse the best. I hope that he can, take it.
Sure. No, so I have a little bit on Stonehouse. So first of all, his name is Elite. Stonehouse. That just sounds like heavy. Sounds like somebody who should do some damage. So some background on him. So reportedly one of the elite punting prospects, undrafted free agent out of Syracuse. He was graded as the third best punter in college football last season with an 89.8 PFF grade, for whatever that's worth. His father actually punted for the New York Giants, and his cousin is an all-pro, Ryan Stonehouse for the Titans. So there you go. He broke school records by averaging 47.1 yards per punt and routinely had hang times well over 5 seconds. So, so he comes in, excuse me. Also, by the way, all ACC. So there you go. So he comes in really credentialed, pelts on the wall, setting school records. I mean, but a lot of guys set school records coming to the NFL. I mean, guys, the league is full of record breakers. But I mean, as a punter, it's always good. Of course, you got to follow up with Tommy Townsend getting out of here. So you got to at least maybe make that your floor. I don't want to make it too high of an expectation, but like you want a guy who can come in and who can boom punts, who can place the ball right, who can play situational football because special teams is highly important. And look, if we can get a guy who can come in and again, matter of fact, here you go. D'Amico Ryan said it best. So this is via Aaron Wilson. Cool guy, shout out him. This is from back in May. Who D'Amico said this about Jack. For Jack, we saw a guy that's very consistent. Texans coach D'Amico Ryan said of Stonehouse, the third highest graded punter in the nation last year. He has a very strong leg. He does a great job of booting the ball. He had a really good first day today. You can hear the ball coming off his foot. That's the thing that stood out about him today. So there you go. So he's getting, vouched for from the coaching staff. He's getting looks already. So low key, that can be one of the more, I don't want to say exciting, but just one of the more notable battles is punter. Unexpected, but I guess that's just where we are. But
On
anyway,
the flip side, Kroger's
yeah,
last name, if you just mess with it, is you could say even Kroger likes HEB if HEB wanted
that
to
is
do an ad with
hilarious.
him, like
That is hilarious, and so that's a layup right there. Another position battle. Well, not position battle, but I guess expectations. So me, Marlon Klein, man, he's kind of taking it on the chin. He's a guy who, look, I've admitted this before. When he was selected at 59th, I audibly said, who? And it, not to be disrespectful, but it was like out of all the other guys, like the Sadiqs, a lot of different tight ends I probably had circled. Yeah, he just wasn't one that I had heard of or really thought much of. So looking into him, I mean, didn't do much in college. Again, I don't want to make too much of his collegiate numbers. I kept hearing the narrative that, well, Michigan doesn't produce a lot of, yeah, okay, fine, whatever. But still, for me as average Joe Blow Texans fan, who's Super Bowl minded, all this different kind of stuff like that, he came off like a project, tight end when they first got him. And it seems every bit of that's exactly what's going to happen unless something happens. He is 6'6", long wingspan, untapped potential, seam threat, inline blocker, fits the scheme, all this stuff. Cade Stover, he might be a fullback. I don't know. Brevin Jordan, can he stay healthy? I don't know. But, so there's some runway there, I think, for tight end 3, tight end 4 more realistically. But, James, I'll ask you, man. So how much do you think Marlon Klein has to prove? A lot. And should we even be expecting much of him in year one? Is that fair?
I like a lot of the points that you made on it. And to be fair, like same thing with me. I kind of locked in, as any NFL fan that likes to watch and like keep up with draft prospects does. I locked in on the guy that I liked for the Texans, which was Sam Roush. He ended up going to the Bears a little later,
Mm,
a tight end out of Stanford. I thought a
mhm.
blocking tight end was definitely, and that's where Marlon Klein kind of falls in. A blocking tight end would have been a great pickup for the Texans, and so it's good that they got him. I think the Jaguars kind of screwed us there. They went with who's that tight end out of Texas A&M? Nate. I don't know how you say his last name.
Burkitcher, is that his name?
Burkitcher. Yeah, they like sniped him
Butcher his
super
name.
early and caused that run on that type of tight end in the
Mhm,
second round.
mhm.
And so I think that there's a lot of contradictions and a lot of factors that affect the way that Klein is viewed. Klein, for all intents and purposes, is a project prospect, and that's someone
Mhm,
that you'd expect to be taken later in the draft. Someone who, if they didn't make the roster, you wouldn't be mad at the use of draft capital. So taking him in the second round already kind of sets him up for failure in
mhm,
a way. And then he injures his hamstring early in the offseason. The
mhm,
the position group itself is prototypical. Like you could look at just about like wide receiver. I think for the Texans is a good comparison where people
mhm,
go, oh well, we got to hedge our bets and get better talent in the depth because there's been injuries, guys that can't stay healthy, so we need to get a guy
mhm,
in there. But with the tight end position, there's only 4 slots. You have obviously your starter in Dalton Schultz. Brevin Jordan is your injury prone guy. And to some extent, Cade Stover is too.
yeah,
And then you've got Foster Moreau, who's a really good
yep,
blocking tight end who kind of fits the prototypical type of tight end that you'd want Marlon Klein to be. And so
mhm,
either Marlon Klein is strong enough to knock Foster Moreau off the roster, or like you said, maybe Cade Stover goes over to fullback. I think you could justify carrying 5 tight ends if you're pulling a fullback, but then the running back room is affected by that, and so you create more questions for yourself with this decision to draft him so early. It's premium
interesting,
draft capital. There's
yeah,
no universe where I see you cut Marlon Klein just because like cutting your second round pick in his first offseason would be a huge like managerial failure on
mhm,
Nick Caserio's part to even take a shot at that position. But yeah, it just creates more questions than answers there, and I think
mhm,
it puts a lot of pressure on Klein. The other part of it that a lot of people aren't talking about is that Marlon Klein is 24 years old,
uh-huh,
so he's a project that needs to be successful right now. If it
yeah,
takes him 2 years, he is now the same age as Jawar Jordan, who's been in the league for 2 years. He's
mhm,
2 years younger than David Montgomery, who's been in the league for 8 years, which also brings up a
man,
discussion
that's
on the running back
crazy.
position that's worth having,
Ooh, that's crazy.
where we have 2 guys in the running back room that have 2 to 3 years of experience and are
Mhm,
2 to 3 years younger than our 8 year bell cow back that we just signed this offseason.
mhm,
Anyway, so age plays a factor in that. You're expecting Marlon
mhm,
Klein to get it really quickly, but you're also saying, well, he's a young kid who's like barely been playing the game.
yeah,
So it's a very risky pick, but I think you know how Caserio is. Once he decides he wants someone, he'll take him wherever he wants to take him. Like if sees the need to do it.
no, hey, you're not wrong. And look, this is one of those classic moves of if it works, you're a genius. But if it doesn't, there's a lot of questions here. And it's crazy just because for me it disrupted the flow of the draft, right? Because again, you had Rutledge, which was like, oh, okay, cool, good job. McDonald was the alley oop lob slam dunk, like, yeah, that's right. He crying and touching the Texans bull logo, all the stuff. So you're riding that emotional high off of that pick, and now you're like, ooh, okay, cool. Who we got it? Second rounder, 59. What we got? Who? Right? And that's kind of the thing. So it's like, and I hate it because I know how as fans we are. Heck, we booed JJ Watt when he was here. So it's like fans get it wrong, right? Look, a lot of hindsight 2020 analysis. And listen, I hope that Klein does excellent. I hope that the Texans bring out a lot of that untapped potential with Kaylee's background being a tight end guy. Like, okay, Dalton Schultz coming off a career year, maybe there's something there. Like you said, James, for you to burn a second round pick at 59th overall when there are a bevy of guys you could have gotten, if not at that position, at other positions, right? Linebacker, heck, other tight end options. Me personally, I was a big Eli Stowers or Kenny Sadiq guy. I thought, hey, I know they're not the most traditional like block and stand up and all the stuff, but playmakers, right? I'm thinking just straight playmakers, ballers, proving guys that are coming out highly touted. But how often do we see the highly touted guys at a college kind of flame out or just not do as well? So again, I hate it for Klein because he just has to beat a lot of the narratives right now.
Yeah,
However,
for
yeah,
me, to just speak
yeah,
real quickly to what was
yo, do it.
available at that spot. I don't know if you follow the University of Texas, but Anthony Hill was selected shortly after, a solid linebacker that I think that could have worked really well in the system. And then if Sam Roush was available a little later, you trade up and get him. There's a couple of different moves that could have made a couple of different tight ends that fit the archetype.
Mhm.
My sister graduated from Vanderbilt, so I keep up with them pretty closely. And Stowers is a guy that definitely caught my eye, but I didn't think he was the kind of tight end the Texans needed. But he does have that wow factor. I can see why
Yeah.
you'd want him on the team.
Cause man, well, you know what? Because man, listen, I'm very tight end biased. I hate to say it, but look around the NFL. What has recently been a trend, right? Travis Kelce's of the world. It's not even new, but it's just something that the Texans haven't experienced to that degree. Kellen Winslow's, Rob Gronkowski's, George
What about
Kittle's.
Owen Daniels?
Yes, he's your GOAT, but he's the GOAT, yes. But I mean, just like a physical, dominating, imposing, like game changing tight end that like is a cheat code kind of level player, like Gronkowski, Kittle, guys like Kelsey. Like we just haven't had that. So that was a lot of why I was like, who was this guy? Because that's just something that I feel like we have not had before. And I feel like that's a quarterback's best friend besides a rushing attack and a defense, a tight end who's elite, who can block, of course, and do all the other things, but who can make a play, be a game changer, yards after catch, knock a guy over, that kind of thing. Yeah, I was there. So again, call it wrong reasoning. I don't know. But we have who we have. The scheme is a scheme. So I hope that I'm highly wrong. And I will take that. I will be happily celebrating Marlon Klein's first 160-yard, 3-touchdown game in week 5. I will happily do that. So there you go. Okay, that's him. So another, kind of positional thing. So we know the obvious ones in Keelan Rutledge and Caden McDonald's, right? Like they're getting all the love. Like they're basically projected either starters or they're going to get like starters minutes, to use a basketball term, in the rotation in short order, right? So, but there's another guy that I'm excited about that, James, I was going to ask you about. I haven't seen a lot of just follow up on him. I don't know if he's hurt or something like that. I haven't heard anything. But Kamari Ramsey, I think he's a guy who is he another young up and coming electric defensive back for this team? I know it's already a bloated secondary, but James, I'll ask you, man, is there a way for him to break through and possibly be like another version of Jalen Petrie over the middle?
I think that the Texans have done a good job of having guys available who will surprise you when asked to do a lot. As much as like guys like MJ Stewart kind of drew the ire of the fans at times, I felt like
Mm-hmm.
MJ Stewart was very valuable for what he was to the team.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they've re-signed him yet or made any effort to bring him back, which then opens the door for Kamari Ramsey. Now,
Mm-hmm.
Kamari Ramsey, to me, you don't draft for the color of the jersey in college or whatever, but obviously you have to look at the fact that the Texans have done pretty well drafting players that wear maroon,
Mm-hmm.
players from USC specifically. My father in law is USC alum. I talked to some people that are in the USC organization, and they really like what the Texans are doing in terms of taking USC players, obviously, because that's good for them to see their players go
Mm-hmm.
get drafted. But I think that Kamari Ramsey rides that line. I kind of have a rule with the Texans since 2023, where
Mm-hmm.
if you're drafted fourth round or higher, you're pretty safe. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're definitely going to make the roster, and you probably will have a chance to prove yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's in that zone where he kind of fits in as a player that will probably be pretty good depth for the team, and I
Mm-hmm.
think could step up and give us something if someone gets injured. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think that. I mean, I think the hope of most Texans fans is that he doesn't get that chance to step up, because it'd be really good for the Texans to stay healthy. But that would be his best opportunity, is if there was some sort of injury.
Mm, okay. I mean, that makes sense. Like you said, he's a guy that he could be a weapon, but objectively, you really wouldn't want to see him too much because that means something negative has probably happened. So that's fair. All right, got a couple more for you, man, and we'll move on to, because I do want to touch on the David Montgomery point that you made earlier, because I think that's very intriguing that you brought him up. So second to last rookie. He has a fan club, James. You know who I'm talking about here. The Lewis Bond fan club. Shout out LBFC. Right? That's right. Going strong. I don't know how many
Consider,
weeks it's been
consider
now.
me a member of LBFC.
Absolutely. That's right. We got to come up with like either a shirt, like maybe got to get Stressens on it because he comes out with the gear probably every week. So
Maybe Barrett will do it. Maybe Dr. Barrett's got something
yeah,
going.
man. Dr. Barrett. Hey, shout out.
He's the
Yeah, man. But
president.
oh yeah, shout out Dr. Barrett starting the club up. But yeah, man, nah, we legit out here. We deep. But nah, man. So listen, Nico Collins, Jaden Higgins. I got X or Tank Dell. I'm trying to be modest, right? I could just throw Tank in there, but we don't know.
Did you
So
see that
X,
video of Tank yesterday?
I did. I'm not trying to overreact. I know. I'm trying not to, because we're Houstonians, man. As soon as we believe, it just no. So it's like just gotta just say no. Just let them
Just got
prove
to
it.
bottle it up.
Yeah,
And
but
one day you'll
Nico,
die.
Jaden, that's your 1 and 2. You got X slash Tank as like your 3-4, and then at 5 you got Jalen Noel, right? This is the part where wide receiver 6, right? The Texans have had 6 before. Okay, unless I'm wrong, they've had 6 before. The name I've heard brought up to occupy wide receiver 6 has been like the Justin Watsons or someone of that nature, a veteran. Me personally, I look at a Lewis Bond, James, and I say him being coached by Bill O'Brien, who coaches a variation of what you already kind of do. So the language is already kind of there. Uh, Based off what we've seen early in OTAs and minicamp, playmaker, chain mover, smart, spatially aware of himself, right? He just seems like he has a potential to form a really good connection with CJ very quickly. He would know his role. He understands how the offense kind of operates. So, James, I'll ask you, man, would you say that Lewis Bond has one of the stronger opportunities to crack the 53 man as wide receiver 6, or is that a pipe dream?
I think it's interesting you bring it. It's a very valid point, because shifting from an offense run by Bobby Slowick that relies a lot more on shifting wide receivers around, having more wide receivers on the field, which is a strength of CJ's, and going into an
Mm,
offense from Nick Caley that very often tries to run the 11 and 12 personnel, more tight
mm,
ends on the field, less opportunities for wide receivers. It's interesting that you brought up the possibility of carrying 5 wide receivers, because I hadn't really thought about that until you brought it up, but it's certainly something that could be a possibility just based off the lack of demand in the offense for it.
mm,
But
mm,
I've been functioning in the mindset that 6 is the number. And that, to me, that makes the wide receiver room so undramatic. People will look at Hutchinson and be like, because of how much he played, his pay went up. Maybe he's a cap casualty. Sure, but I think that the Texans like the talent he brings to the table. One important discussion point in my eyes is that, assuming Tank Dell comes back and is fully integrated into the offense and plays at a level that gets him plenty of play time, there's still the thought of slot receiver, and a lot of people, I think, misconstrue Tank Dell's size as an indicator that he is primarily a slot receiver, when
mm,
he's really better on the outside. And I think that's in part due to the fact that CJ plays really well in breaking routes. And so
mm,
you can have an in breaking route from the slot, obviously, but a lot of Tank Dell's outside breaking in is kind of what made their connection so special, along with Nico Collins. And it's something that took a hit in this Nick Caley offense. I'm hoping he figures that out.
mm,
But with that, I think Lewis Bond easily has a place, because he really, outside of Jalen Noel, would be the only primary slot receiver. So I think his role slots very well for earning a spot for depth. Whereas like
Mm-hmm.
a Justin Watson's a longer receiver.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know what the Texans' obsession is with Justin Watson. I thought he was a camp body the whole time, and they seemed intent, like dead
Mm-hmm.
set on him playing a role in this Texans offense, along with Braxton Berrios, who, you know, more understandable with him. He's a slot wide receiver and had kick return ability, which I don't know. Does Justin Watson do kick return? I don't think he did kick returns.
No, not
So
necessarily. No.
so then now you're like 6 wide receivers in the group that they have. It
Mm-hmm.
would be shocking to me if it like the way you described it. You know, Nico, Tank, Hutch, Higgins, Knoll, and Bond. That to me is easily the Texans wide receiver room. It's one of the rare times, in my opinion, where a player drafted after the 5th round has a very clear path to making the roster. There's been players that have done it, like
Mm-hmm.
I'm blanking on his name. He's a linebacker.
It is. You talking about not Jamal Hill, are you?
Jamal Hill.
Oh yeah, that's bad. That's bad.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't believe it blanked
That's
on that
pretty
one.
bad. That's pretty
Jamal
bad.
Hill was a
Yeah,
6th round pick, and
he was.
a lot of people viewed linebacker as like a need for the Texans, but there was a lot
Mm-hmm.
of guys that you're like, well, the Texans like this guy, and this guy was signed in free agency and is probably going to make the roster. And they made the surprise move. They cut, I can't even remember who it was. They signed in free agency from the Jets. It was Blake Cashman.
Oh well, yeah. No, they traded him. Wait. No. So
The
they
Vikings
got
traded
him
him
from. No, so they got him from the Jets, and he went and balled out, and then went to Minnesota.
and got a big contract there.
Yes, sir. So yeah, no, he
Okay.
was a success story actually. So
Yeah. So there was player I can't remember who they traded for. He's only there in the offseason. They cut him, but he was looking like shaping up to be another Blake Cashman addition, where they're
mm,
bringing in a guy that had shown potential but hadn't lived up. That's a classic Texan signing. You look at Ed
yeah,
Ingram,
yeah,
or a trade where they give up a 7th round pick for a guy who hasn't lived up to his potential, and then they develop him, which is great to see that the Texans can do that. But then you see a guy like Jamal Hill make the roster over that
mm,
guy,
yeah,
and that I think speaks volumes to their ability to draft later. Even though they have reached a point, like I call it the poverty franchise mentality, where players
mm,
or where fans will look at a draft class and go, every single player in this draft class has to plug and play and be
mm-hmm,
ready to play a role on this team, because
right,
we are so bad that we need the talent. And the Texans
right,
are not a poverty franchise anymore. Like there's been times, I think we all lived it, where it was like, man, I need this 7th round pick from San Jose State University to
yeah,
really do something that he didn't do in the college level, but he
yeah,
needs to do it in the pros because this team needs it. And
mm,
this Texans team is like, if you're not a 4th round pick or higher, you should feel blessed to have the opportunity to go through the offseason with this team and potentially make it. Like, that's kind of where I'm at right now. But Lewis Bond has a very clear path to the roster. I think he fits really well.
No, absolutely. No, you're right, man. Like we mentioned before, and we say that not just because we're excited about him because he has a good look with dreads and knows how to catch. Like no, there are very systemic things that are in play that would favor a Bond over a Justin Watson or heck, if it came down to it and they needed to squeeze a guy like Xavier Hutchinson has accumulated some value to where you could probably get a late pick for him. I don't know, mid to late pick, and Bond can slide in. Not saying that he should. Please, nobody clip this part and say he said that exit. I did not say that. I said crazier things have happened. If they needed to squeeze a guy and they could get some value, because the Texans, they do that too. They will sell high on the guy if they need to. Lewis Bond would benefit because he's the most ready-made prospect at his draft position to be able to take on maybe some low leverage situations, right? And who knows, he probably could do more. But yeah, man. But between Lewis Bonds and then Aiden Fishers, Wade Woodaz, and Fabechi and Weewu, like you said, man, it's just a lot of guys who are developmental pieces, a lot of guys who will most likely be here for the future. You would hope that nothing catastrophic happens to where you have to see some of these guys too soon. Like, for example, no disrespect to Aiden, but like if we saw 7th round pick Aiden Fisher too soon, it's like, okay, well, hold on, wait, what happened with Wade? What happened to Aziz? What happened? That's kind of
What happened?
right, exactly. No disrespect, but that's just kind of what we're talking about here. Even Fabechi, like now, I think he could probably find the field only because he's versatile, right, between center and guard, And you got, Wyatt Teller, who has somewhat of an injury history, so he might end up missing some time, a game or two. Hopefully not, but maybe. So you have a guy who maybe you can plug in really quick, or him or Evan Brown. But still, like, just you have guys who are meat and potatoes moves who could theoretically step in if they need to, but you really don't want to see them until like seasons 2 or 3 with them being here. And if that's what you see, then that's excellent, because your foundation is now set both now and for the future, and you stay young. So that's a great thing. But switching gears from the rookie side of things, so now to the vets, the guys who are expected to play make. James, you brought this man's name up earlier, and it was fascinating. David Montgomery, all of 29 years old, right? The joke goes the Texans love their, above 28-year-old RBs. Man, so what are your thoughts on David Montgomery's addition, and like, what are your expectations on what a good rushing season would be with him on the team?
I think it's great for Woody Marks that Montgomery was brought in, and some people will disagree, but I mean, Woody Marks early in his career need the opportunity to be, the guy for a bit, and he got that his rookie year, showed what he can do. And like I said earlier, I mean, you look at Woody Marks, you look at Jawar Jordan, those are two guys that within the next 2 to 3 years are going to be the same age that David Montgomery is now. So David Montgomery has 8 years of experience. These guys will have like 5 or 6 when they reach that point at most. And so when we look at age and how it factors in and everything, I think that David Montgomery is a very temporary solution, but I think that he brings a mentality. He's excited to be here. I talked with Tom on the bullpen about, how there's some positions on this Texans offense that need a true veteran. And he was like, well, what's the definition of a veteran? Nico Collins is a veteran. And I'm like, yeah, but Nico Collins is not like the veteran that you need for this team in the way that you like, where you sign a guy. And that's the only thing that could threaten Lewis Bond's spot. Going back to that discussion, is if the Texans decided a D Hop or like a Stephon Diggs, players that have been on the roster before that have been that vet,
That
could
Stresson's
come
guy,
back and
Diggs.
serve that role.
Yeah.
So looking at, Montgomery, he is that vet. He's been signed into that room to be that guy, but he's also the bell cow. I don't think there's any doubt that outside of like third down spot situations, like he's going to be on the field every play. And I think he brings a similar element to the table that Joe Mixon did in terms of like veteran running back that is skilled enough to be the starter. That's just a really good deal for the Texans to have in the room, And obviously the Mixon situation played out differently to where it became maybe less of a good deal, but there was that stretch in 2024. We'll always have that. So I think that Dave Montgomery's perfect. And I am surprised the Texans didn't get like a younger running back in the draft, because like I said, the guys that they have that are their young prospects in terms of league time are guys that are going to reach that 30-year-old ceiling a lot quicker than maybe some of the other young running backs that were available in this draft.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're not wrong. Again, this is where I had my guys. There was one in particular, Mike Washington, right? Don't ask
Love
me
Mike
why,
Washington.
but I was when the Raiders got him, I was sick, man, because I was just thinking about just the physical tools, the burst. He just again just a playmaker, like a guy who just can get the ball and just good things are going to happen. Simply put, not a lot of statistical things to go with that. Just some anecdotal, like eye test tells me that guy will make plays.
Well, he's a
Um,
1,000-yard back in
I
college, in the
that
SEC.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So it's
He had a
like,
fumble problem, though. That was his big knock.
yeah. So that's what I'm saying, man. So, but those things aside, yes, like you, and I love the distinction that you made. It wasn't to knock Nico that you said he wasn't like that kind of veteran you're talking about, and I get what you're saying. Like, it's when we try to parse out, like, yes, by the numbers, Nico is a veteran in that he's he has tenure, he has years, but it's just a presence to certain veterans where it's like a guy who comes in and like a culture setter when he gets there. Not saying
You know who
Nico
I
can't do
compared
that.
Nico to?
Who?
I compared him to Jordan Alvarez, just like
Mm,
a gentle giant. He's not like the clubhouse guy who's like in the Astros. Like I reckon that like Carlos Correa or someone is going up and
yeah.
making like the rah
Yes.
rah speeches and stuff. But
Or
like he's
Verlander when he was
definitely
here.
the most skilled player in the room. Like,
Yes.
but he's not
Yes.
the leader in that way. I mean, as far as we've seen, I don't know.
Mhm.
Maybe he is, but
Right. No, no, I agree. Look, we don't know in the locker room. We don't know. But I love that analogy. Like you said, like Jordan is a silent killer. Like he's silent, but he will take you 450. Like like so he's not the raw beat your chest guy. That was Verlander. That was Correa. Like Bregman when he was here. Guys like that who would like, take the bull by the horns and audibly tell you exactly what you needed to do. For the Texans, I mean, and I love the fact that you brought up Mixon. Like, yeah, Mixon was that guy. Like I admired Mixon so much because it wasn't just the fact that he was 1,000-yard rusher, double-digit touchdowns. He brought an attitude, a swagger. He brought a mentality and a belief that said, "We are going to finish this game. I am going to finish this drive," and he did it. Right, like he carried you literally, figuratively against the Colts to victory in Week 1. Heck, he helped you have a 1 point deficit in the AFC divisional round against the Chiefs in 2024. Like he added that element, and I hated that we missed that. Like not just his playmaking, but just his attitude and belief, and just that swarminess that the defense has. Like Joe Mixon was just dripping in that. So David Montgomery, I think he's a perfect kind of juxtaposition to that. In that he's the same kind of mentality kind of guy. Like the moment he got here, his belief is like, "Hey man, listen, we're gonna make plays too." Like I know we're talking about the defense, but hey, we got something here too. I trust my guys. I'm gonna play make. That's always been him. And for those who for those who would say, "Oh, he has never been like 1,200-yard and 2,000-yard receiver, stuff like that," like please understand, David Montgomery has been a solid running back at worst his entire career. Throughout 8 years, the man has never rushed for less than 700 yards. He's cracked over 1,000 yards twice. And then keep in mind, he played for the Chicago Bears at a terrible time. Unless I'm wrong, wasn't that Eberflus? He was there. I'm trying to see if there was some overlap, but Nagy, that was what it was. I think Nagy / Eberflus kind of was like Montgomery's era, and that offense was horrendously bad. So you want me to judge him based off of like a poor offensive infrastructure where Mitch Trubisky was we're not going to do that. So then he goes to Detroit where he splits carries with arguably a top 3 running back in the league in Jamar Gibbs. Like, again, these are situations that you cannot use to say that's why David Montgomery is not a guy who could be my RB1, especially in this kind of situation. Like, he brings playmaking, veteran leadership. He's been in like a split carry system before, but now he's kind of hungry to reestablish himself as the true undisputed RB1, which again, that helps out everybody below him because now Woody, you take the tax off of his body because he was in and out of the blue tent all last year. I'll tell people this: he probably set a record for most blue tent trips in a season ever. Like the guy was always nicked something, but he was tough. He was resilient. He always finished. But I mean, dang, every other time up and down the sideline, he was going to the tent or coming out of the tent or about to go into the tent. So then it just helps everybody. And again, like this offense needs that mentality. Nico can do that in spots, but he kind of reminds me of Dwight Howard, like a jovial guy, happy. He can be intense, but that's just he just plays. He just balls out. He's just a playmaker. David Montgomery, the Joe Mixons of the world, those guys are the ones mentality wise, like, yeah, I believe we're gonna win this game. Give me the rock, get out of the way. So that's what I love about David Montgomery being here. And I guess I'll ask you this, James. So do you think this Texans offense, as constructed, offensive line, running back, and the Kaylee's play calling and situational awareness, do you think they're now capable of, let's say, like a top 10 rushing season, all things considered? Or is that overly ambitious?
I think that we've seen this team sort of retool itself. So everyone kind of saw it. They were like, we'll move on from Bobby Slowick and everything's just going to go. We're looking at two different offensive styles that require two different offensive styles of player. Specifically along the offensive line, we're looking at a team that requires a lot of guts, a lot of different style of player relative to what Bobby Slowick had built to run his offensive line. And so I think that the Texans have taken a lot of steps in the right direction. The offensive line's pretty much been completely retooled from the Slowick era, with guys that'll do really well. I'm a big fan of Jarrett Patterson. I think he could be maybe the last casualty of that era, him and Blake Fisher, because those were players that were drafted to fit what Bobby Slowick does on offense, and now Nick Caley runs it. So I think that there's a huge chance for improvement, and I think that if we want to see what everyone's asking for from CJ, and if CJ wants to sign the contract that he's probably not going to sign this offseason because of the contract that he wants to sign, the run game improving in that way is going to be a huge step in that direction. So I do think the pieces are there. The most interesting thing to me is the Keelan Rutledge conundrum, where there's people that think that Jake Andrews isn't going to be the starting center, which I mean, I don't know a lot about Evan Brown. Like, everyone seems to think he's God's gift to playing center, or that he's a major improvement. One thing to look at is that Jake Andrews was a top half of the league center by almost every metric, and he was playing injured.
Mm,
So I do think that if Keelan Rutledge or Evan Brown was an improvement on Jake Andrews, that we could see Jake Andrews jettisoned. But there
mm,
is still the possibility that maybe he is one of the starters that carries over from last season
mm,
if, when healthy, he plays a little better than he did before.
mm,
So the conundrum of where Keelan Rutledge slots in, because that's something that the conversation that I had on draft night was, oh, they probably, he played at center in the Senior Bowl. They probably liked him at that. And he's a first round pick, so he'll see the field. And
mm,
then the national media and everyone seems to like have conflated this discussion to be like this thing of like no one seems to know where he's going to play or if he's going to play. And I
mm,
think it's tough to spend first round capital on a player that doesn't see the field in his first
mm,
season. So I have said it before that I wouldn't like hate it if he like took over mid-season for Wyatt Teller,
mm,
or at
mm,
center. But
mm.
I do think that the Texans, based on how they talk about him, want him to be able to take a spot at the start of the season. It's just a matter of can he.
Sure. No, and it's simply put, Nick Casario said it, and you just got through saying it. Excuse me. In cases like this, the players decide the depth chart, not the investment, not the money, not the draft positioning. It's all about who beats out who when the pads and the helmets come on. So I think, look, that's what makes me so excited about tomorrow and about next week, where when the helmets and pads come on, like all the shirts and shorts superstars like that. Hey, that's by the wayside. Like, this is football. We're getting ready. Like, we're getting padded up, and now we're going to determine who's actually who. When there's contact, when there's physicality, when you got to move some bodies, right? When we're really trying to get this offense off the ground in the offseason, right? Because that matters. Like, I want to see more reports of the offense. I don't want to say dominating the defense, because that would not be good, but at least putting up a better fight, from series to series, 7-on-7 or whatever they do. Like, I just want to hear more of that. And again, this is a primo opportunity for all the rookies we discussed earlier, the rushing attack, the veterans, to establish who is going to be who with about 7-8 weeks left until the regular season. And I'm hyped for it. So yeah, man, that's my thing, man. Yeah, I'm all hyped, man. But to kind of close things out, man. Again, James, I thank you for your time, bro. Thank you for being flexible. It's been an honor to have you. And again, I look forward to doing this. Look forward to doing this again if you ever have the time to. So what are your? I guess I would say, what is your final big question for the offense and the defense? Like, what are your thoughts right now? What biggest question do they need to answer for you to feel comfortable heading into the regular season? Let's start with offense.
Over the offense, I mean, it's simple. They need to answer if what has been done is enough to get the run game going.
Mm-hmm,
Because a lot of people ask questions about CJ and what he
mm-hmm,
can do. I think it's very clear what CJ can do, and I think it all hinges on this. I have the Texans as a 13-win team this season, after
mm-hmm,
for the past 3 seasons having them as 10 or 11-win teams.
mm-hmm.
This is a 13-win team, I think, at the minimum. And I think that they can
Minimum.
take the one
Mm,
seed. I think the questions around CJ are too involved in his skill level. He's skilled. I think it's a matter of whether or not we're playing at home or not in the playoffs. And so I
mm,
think if the Texans play at home in the playoffs, you'll see us in LA in February. Throughout, like it doesn't necessarily have to be the one seed, but if you look up the splits when you have time, because I posted about it a while back. But CJ's career splits at home and away, CJ's postseason splits home and away, his just look it up, and you'll
mhm,
you'll instantly go, wow, this Texans team needs to take the one seed. They can't start slow.
mhm,
They have to literally win 10 games in a row to start the season, and like just dominate, take the
mhm,
AFC. That's going to be the key.
okay,
So as far as the defense goes,
mhm,
the biggest question for me, I don't know. There's not really. I guess linebacker. Can
mhm,
Toa hold up over a whole season of being expected to be the guy? Because the way that they run that scheme, nickel's basically the base. So you're running
mhm,
Aziz and Toa. Can they hold up? And is what they did in the draft or like how they've built this linebacker, because speed's already out for the first few weeks of the season. Is how they've built this linebacker room going to be enough to pick up the slack when and if something happens in terms of like an injury?
Mm. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Again, especially with smart offensive coordinators, like we saw Sean Payton last year, like we saw, oh my goodness, the Raiders was the head coach OC. But like we saw, like there were a couple moments where our linebacking core, even healthy, was picked on, was targeted with running back wheel routes to the tune of touchdowns, like with Gene T or with I wonder is that what was that Hampton for the Broncos. So
Omarion Hampton.
there you go. So, we've seen this linebacking core picked on in the passing game. So, which is why, I am excited about guys like Wade Woodaz, because even though he's a rookie and even though we don't really want to ask of him too much, I do believe that he has enough variation as a, as a cover guy in a short to intermediate, to where those are things that the Texans are planning against. Yeah, I just hope for improvements from Henry T and others, like, to make sure that doesn't happen. But hey, if it happens, hey, then hey, tippy cap to the opposing offense. Hey, they make plays too. But if you can fix those solvable problems early, then why not do that? So my big question will be this: I'm gonna go defense and offense. So on the defensive side of the ball, I want to know, how will Caden McDonald, make his impact? I will say that, of course, you have the best pass rushing duo in the NFL. You have Will Anderson Jr., Daniil Hunter. You got 3 and 6 on the NFL's top 10 positional rankings at the defensive end position. So what you have there. But Caden McDonald, man, like, just a big space eater in the middle, a tree trunk of a dude, can just, my question is, like, can his strength translate to the NFL level proficiently enough early on enough to where it's like, you got these two dogs on the outside you got to be concerned about. And then you're getting your center pushed into your lap with Caden McDonald just bulldozing his way, right? Because in my mind, if that happens, what do you do? Because that's when more tips, overthrows, that's when panic happens, that's when more sacks happen. So I'm wanting to know, how prolific will this defensive line be with Cade McDonald? Will he translate early? Will he get early starting reps? Or if he's not a starter early, will he be able to rotate in with Sheldon and Tommy T, quickly enough and be an impact player? So that's kind of my thing. All right, I'm going to cheat a little bit. My second kind of question on the defensive side of the ball: are they done adding? And what I mean by that is at defensive end. We know that they don't have defensive end number 3. No disrespect to Logan Halls and, Dilla Horton's, guys like that. But, there are some guys out there who can be like an infinity stone in your infinity gauntlet, right? Just drop that in there. I'm thinking Jadeveon Clowney. Could he have a homecoming? I think Von Miller would be fascinating, phenomenal addition. He just said, I think I picked the wrong team out of Seattle and Washington. He posted a picture recently of himself in a Cowboys jersey, which I've said it before on a couple episodes ago. It's so beneath him. I feel like he picked the right state, but the wrong team, right? Like, I think no state income tax. He's healthy. He wants to play. He's not just, playing out the string. He's a playmaker still. I want to say he leads the league right now amongst active pass rushers with sacks. So there's that. So again, you plug him in or Clowney in with a rotation that already has Daniil Hunter, Will Anderson, and this defensive line and secondary group. Oh my gosh, it's barbecue
It's not
chicken.
a small role either. You've got Derek Barnett was taking up 350 snaps last season, like, and his role was very important. So I think that the value of a guy like that, you're right on in terms of like bringing in guys like that to do that.
That's what I'm saying, man. But you see the vision. That's what I'm saying. So if Derek Barnett did what he did, I mean, scooping scores, like making plays. Like, you plug in a guy who's an upgrade over that. Oh my gosh, that's unfair. So then on the offensive side of the ball, I think for me it starts with Nick Haley. I know we have talked about C.J. Stroud. We talked about the running game. We talked about wide receivers. We talked about the offensive line. And friend of the show, Jonathan Alexander, I had him on a couple episodes ago. He put out a piece talking about, Nick Haley, talking to him about what was his first year like. And one of the things that Haley said of himself, and to his credit, he owned it, that he was a bit overly aggressive as a play caller. He was a bit of square peg, round hole kind of guy, like kind of trying to manufacture some things that maybe the personnel wouldn't have told you to try to do, right? A key example for me was against the Pittsburgh Steelers in the playoffs. And the offense was, flowing. It wasn't really humming, but it was flowing down the field. And you call an ill-conceived flea flicker that led to, a turnover situation. Like that's the kind of thing for me where it's like, Nick Caley, does he learn from his mistakes enough to where in year 2 he does not have to be Kyle Shanahan, he does not have to be, anything like that, but can he coach up a consistently competent, clean operating offense that is situationally aware, that cuts down on penalties, that does not put CJ Stroud in precarious positions and asking him to constantly play make his way out of it? Like, are you knowing when to call a run? Are you knowing when to call play action? Like, and I'm not a genius. I'm not an aficionado. That's why I'm at home on a podcast right now. They make the big bucks. I'm just saying, we watch film, we study these things, and we just kind of understand on a basic level. As the coordinator, it all starts with you. CJ Stroud said his philosophy with Caley or his OCs is you call it, we ball it, telling me that he does not disrupt the apple cart. He trusts his OCs to, run a nice play, and he does it. And so I just hope that Nick Caley in year 2 rewards the trust of DeMeco Ryans, rewards the trust of CJ Stroud, and just helps to kind of get out of his own way and not overcomplicate football and just run with the improved personnel that you have and stick with what works. You dominated time of possession last year. Low key, you actually had an efficient passing attack last year, in spite of the Jalen Oil not getting featured a lot and Higgins not getting featured a lot sometimes. Like, you low key had a decent one at least. Your rushing attack was your weakest element. Now you have all these new toys and weapons to be better with. Do we see an improved Nick Caley as a result? That's my biggest thing. If we do, that trickles down to everything else. And I believe a top 10 offense gets you to a Super Bowl. I do. I think they're capable. It just depends on them putting their heads together and meshing well enough and saying, hey, let's stick with what works consistently. But yeah, man. But with that being said, James, again, I appreciate having you on, sir. Tell the people, what are you and Third Coast working on next? Any projects we're looking out for?
We just got the bullpen. We're gonna retool it for the season. See what we do. I know in the past we've done like previews and recaps and stuff like that. So look into how we're gonna do it. Get our in season mode ready to go. But right now we're just live weekly on Thursdays. Typically, I think we did Friday last week, but Thursdays it's at 8. I think it's at 8. Pretty sure. We're really flexible with it because we've had to move it around a lot due to our schedules. But so there's that. I'm on Bleacher Report, gearing up for the in season of that. I do short videos for them on the app. So if you follow the Texans on there, you'll see me and Ruben over on there. And then if you want to find anything I'm doing social wise, it's just at James Roy NFL wherever you get your social media.
All right. Awesome, man. Hey, once again, this is co-host of the Bullpen, James Roy. Cool, swell guy. Check out his information. Good football talk, good analysis, good passion. Third Coast Tom, wish he was here, but shout out to him too. Again, my name is Clayton. I actually didn't say this earlier, but I cover the Houston Texans for Tour Times of the Fansided Network. This has been We Want Houston. We will see you guys at training camp for all who come tomorrow. It all starts, yes, sir. Rookies report in a week. Veterans show up. Football's back, baby. Go Texans, and we'll see you guys soon.